Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I thought I would just be talking about Final Fantasy, my collection, my thoughts on each game, just because this is a video I wanted to do on the channel for so dang long. I know I kind of mentioned it in my 3DS collection and Pokemon collection videos that eventually I'd like to talk about Final Fantasy. It's not going to be like an in-depth review because I do have quite a bit of games to go through, including digital versions of some games because some of them are hard to find physically, but I still wanted to experience them, along with a lot of the side games, along with some other merchandise I have from the franchise. So this is going to be a long video. I just want to warn you. I kind of knew that going in, and that's why it took me so long to probably get my headspace to record this video, because I knew it was going to be a long one. But I do want to let you know before continuing the video that I am going to leave timestamps, and I'm not going to be spoiling any of the games. I don't want to spoil this for someone that hasn't played a Final Fantasy game before. I'll have my recommendations on what you should play first as well. I think it's only appropriate we start with the mainline series. So talking about the mainline series, I have to let you guys know off the bat, I didn't really grow up in the NES era. I grew up more on the SNES, PS1 era. So those are the games I'm probably going to have the most experience and probably talk most about in depth. 1 through 3 I found were very simple games from when I played them. I played the mobile versions because they're so hard to find physically. I don't have an NES in my house. I have an SNES and upwards in terms of Nintendo consoles, but I don't have an NES in my house. So just playing Final Fantasies 1 is just kind of almost impossible for me, and then 2 and 3 weren't even released here until they made obviously the Game Boy Advance ports and the DS ports and all that stuff. So I just got them on mobile to try them out. I knew they weren't going to be like the games that were going to be in my favorite category, but I was surprised to find out that Final Fantasy 1 was pretty dang good. In fact, probably, I know this isn't saying much out of 15 mainline games, but it's in the upper 10, top 10 in my personal opinion, just because it's just a fun, simple adventure. It does have its problems, but when I'm talking about Final Fantasy 1, I'm talking about the remake, the PSP iOS version. I'm not talking about that original one with all the bugs and all that stuff. I'm talking about the more balanced one that came out way later on that had some additional content and updated music. So in my opinion, Final Fantasy 1 is still a pretty dang good game. 2, I didn't really get into that much. To be honest, I went through maybe the first battle when it's just kind of a nice story cutscene. I think it's the first Final Fantasy that took the story a lot more seriously. And then part 3 also tried to do something similar, but I did find part 3 in terms of soundtrack and in terms of graphics and approach to be the more polished one. I just kind of like the gameplay and simplicity of Final Fantasy 1 a little bit more. But Final Fantasy 3 out of those are the most polished. I would recommend the DS version. There's no 3DS version. I would recommend the DS version if you wanted to play that. Again, I personally got the mobile versions just because they were just easier to get for me personally. It's really hard to find a Game Boy or PSP copy of Final Fantasy 1, and it's really hard to find a DS copy of Final Fantasy 3 right now for me personally, especially with the pandemic and everything. I was trying to get all the Final Fantasies this year, but obviously that kind of became a lot harder. If I were to recommend something from the NES era, I would definitely recommend 3, and then 1, and then maybe 2. A lot of people consider 2 to be the worst one. I can see that, but I don't think it's a terrible game. And I don't think it's an awful game like some people make it out to be. It's just that the battle system is not that great, it's not that polished, and I think that's what deters people away from Final Fantasy 2. However, that all being said, I think it's more important that I talk about the games I'm actually more familiar with, which is the SNES era of Final Fantasies. Now, Final Fantasy 4, I originally completed on the Nintendo DS. It was really fun to kind of just go through Final Fantasy 4 for the first time on the DS because there was so many updated aspects of it. Updated graphics, there was an updated soundtrack, as well as voice acting, which was actually not that bad for a DS title, and just a lot of nice little touches to the DS version. They really went all out to create this remake in particular. Now, the graphics are not like the best, but they do look better than, say, like FF7's graphics, which people consider to be the best Final Fantasy. In my opinion, Final Fantasy 4 on the DS looks a little bit better than that. It has a more complete look, and I feel like the characters move a little bit more naturally, in my personal opinion. But in terms of gameplay, it's also really fun. I think to this day, it's the only Final Fantasy where you can have 5 characters in your party. They did make a Steam and iOS version, which is basically the DS version with a normal difficulty. So if this is your first time going through the series, I'd probably recommend getting the Steam or iOS version if you can handle the iOS version. But if you have a Nintendo DS, I really like this one. Using the bottom screen as the map is really fun too. So Final Fantasy 4 on the DS, Love that game. Now, I personally have Final Fantasy V on my phone. It's not the best way to play it, but unfortunately, I've been trying to look for a copy of Final Fantasy V for the Game Boy for so long, and it's getting more and more expensive as time goes on. So that was just the best way I can personally play it. I'm still enjoying it. It's been really fun. I like the battle system, and I like the graphics in terms of the updated look, I guess. I know some people don't like it, but to me personally, it doesn't look terrible. I think once you get to Final Fantasy VI, you can argue that one does look pretty bad, but compared to Final Fantasy V, when they were like more like scrunched down, I don't think the Final Fantasy V on the iOS or Steam looks that bad, but I can see why people don't like it, especially when you're coming off such a refined, sprite work look. For me personally, it's not like a big deal. I'm never one to just judge a game based on graphics. For me, it's more about story and gameplay. But Final Fantasy V on the iOS is a pretty fun version. There's iCloud saves and everything. Again, I love the job system in that game, but I'm not really completed the story yet, so I don't know the story too well. I just got off the pirate ship, so I'm pretty early in the game, I believe. But it's been really fun going through Final Fantasy V. The humor is really great in it too, so that's been fun to go through as well. And the music is obviously fantastic in this game. So Final Fantasy V is a really good game. I just have to complete it before I have anything else to say. I've completed 4, 6, and onward, but 5 was one of those black sheep that I didn't really complete. So I probably need to just go through it this year and maybe make an updated video at some point and just talk about my thoughts on Final Fantasy V in particular. Now moving on to Final Fantasy VI. This is one of my favorite Final Fantasies of all time. Final Fantasy VI just has such a special place in my heart. It was the one I played on my uncle's SNES growing up, and it was just a wonderful ride from start to finish. I eventually got the Game Boy Advance version, which I recommend for the better translation to keep the sprite work. The only downside about this version is just the audio quality with the music. For me, music is pretty damn important, so I did get the iOS version and try that out. I actually beat the game in the iOS version, but I could definitely see how the graphics suffered. So you can either choose better graphics with worse sound, or better sound with worse graphics. But I don't think the graphics are terrible in the iOS version. It's just now, recently with the iOS updates, it looks more stretched out and kind of gross to me. I'd probably recommend the Steam version, which is a nice mix of both. And I'm pretty sure there are mods where you can have the classic look with the updated stuff in it. But the Game Boy Advance version is the first time I completed the game, and I love this game so much. The characters, the music, the story, there's just so much to love about Final Fantasy VI. Unfortunately, I can't say too much because spoilers and stuff, but there's just, especially after the halfway point, there's a twist in the story that I personally didn't see coming because, I was a kid, I didn't have the internet at the time, and this was just a fun thing to go through for the first time, and I love this game. The fact that they were able to fit this in a Game Boy Advance cartridge is amazing. If you don't have a Game Boy Advance though, don't worry, there's still a Steam version. Ugly graphics aside, it's still not a bad port. But man, I could talk about Final Fantasy VI all day, but I think that deserves its own video, and I have so many other games to get through. So Final Fantasy VI, a must. I can definitely recommend this as someone's first Final Fantasy for sure. Now let's go through everyone's favorite Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy VII. Not my favorite, but a really damn good game nonetheless. I have the black label. I was really picky when it came to this when the first time I got it. I don't think I'd be as picky nowadays, but I got the black label PlayStation version of Final Fantasy VII, and it comes with the booklet and everything. This is such a great game. I know we also have the remake, which is out, and without spoiling anything, I could just say you still kind of need to play this one first. I don't want to spoil anything. I'm pretty sure if you're a Final Fantasy fan, then you kind of know like the plot twist at the end of this. But Final Fantasy VII just has a special place in my heart, just because it was the first time I saw Final Fantasy in 3D. The story is also great. The soundtrack, in terms of the PlayStation era, I genuinely think this probably is tied with 8 for best soundtrack of the PlayStation era. possibly for the first 9 Final Fantasies of the original guard with the original team before series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi kind of took a backseat with the franchise. This and Final Fantasy 8 have some of the best soundtracks in the series. Final Fantasy 7, just for its wonderful use of ambient tracks with electro, with also an orchestra. It was just fantastic to listen through and play through. If you haven't played through Final Fantasy 7, again, I highly recommend it. There's a really fun battle system, a really fun materia system as well. The story is a classic. I kind of have some issues with some parts of the story, but overall, I did enjoy the stories from beginning to end. It was just certain character decisions that I didn't really enjoy. I still love this game. It's definitely a must. It's a classic. I mean, it's one of the best games ever made. So give it a chance if you want. If you think this interests you, I honestly don't recommend playing the remake first because this game, because of how this ends. Again, I don't want to spoil anything. Just talking about the remake really quick before moving on, because I feel weird talking about the remake after talking about all the other games and just coming back to 7. I think the remake is a great, fantastic, and honestly somewhat revolutionary kind of game in terms of like what it was able to do to redefine a remake. And I'm actually genuinely excited for part 2 and part 3, just because I kind of wanted to see where it goes. If I don't like the direction this goes in, I still have the original, right? So I'll give it a chance. I'm willing to give the remake a chance, like to wow me, maybe see if this can work out. But because I don't know when the remake is going to be done and how many parts there are going to be, that's another problem I have. I hope it's at 3 to 4 parts at most, but I just hope that this doesn't become like a 6-part series, because I still like this game a lot though. Again, 8.5, 9 out of 10. I'm still excited to see where 7 and the concurrent remakes go in the future. So Final Fantasy VIII is one of those love-hate games. Again, I have a black label version of Final Fantasy VIII over here. But it's a love and hate relationship with Final Fantasy VIII, and personally, I do love this game. I think it's a very good Final Fantasy, not in my top 5, but still in the top 10 category, just because I love the ideas and the risks that the team took when developing this. This is the first time that Hironobu Sakaguchi took a backseat for a Final Fantasy game, and they kind of did a lot of experimental stuff. In terms of graphics for the PS1 era, I personally think this one looks the best. In terms of story, I do like Final Fantasy VIII's story quite a bit. It does have some problems in terms of the villain not being as fleshed out as I like her to be. But the aspect that I love the most about Final Fantasy VIII personally is just the cast of characters. There's a lot of funny moments with even the rival characters, Raijin and Fujin. They were just so fun to watch. Their characters, I would just initially look at and be like, they're stereotypical like rival characters, but there's so much personality and quirks to them, and I think that they did a really good job writing the characters. Even the characters that didn't have a very huge role in this particular title have so much characterization through the dialogue, through their actions, that it just makes me love them for some reason, and that's something I really enjoy. Not everybody's gonna like Squall, and to be honest, I didn't really like him at first when I was playing through the game, but through repeat playthroughs of this particular title, I've really grown to love Squall as a character. He's not as like emo as some people make him out to be. He has some funny, quirky moments. Even though they're kids, I feel like they're going through very adult-like situations, and there's a lot of the theme of growing up and getting past childhood trauma in this game that I just found very endearing. Final Fantasy VIII's best point for me is its music. The characters are great, the story is pretty good, but the music is where this game really excels, and I think just having the first vocal track in a Final Fantasy, Eyes on Me, being this good is really great, and the way that they incorporate it into the story, just fantastic in my opinion. I love Final Fantasy VIII quite a bit. Again, not my top 5, but I love the risks and I appreciate this game on so many aspects. So Final Fantasy VIII is a big hit for me. I wouldn't recommend it as someone's first Final Fantasy, but once you play through a few of them, if you want to give 8 a chance, please, by all means, give 8 a chance, because it's a really good Final Fantasy title. Now moving on to my absolute favorite Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy IX. Again, black label, Final Fantasy IX. This is my favorite Final Fantasy. I know that's a very popular thing to say. A lot of people will say 7, 9, 10, or sometimes 8 and 6. For me, it's 9 and 6, and then I'll kind of get through the rest of my ranking afterwards as well. But 9 is my favorite. I love the characters, the story. The villain is my second favorite in the entire series. Kuja is one of the best villains, just by far. The relationship that the characters have, the scenarios that they're put in. There's a particular character that I hated at first, but grew to love over time. There's so much to love about this game, and I can't put into words what makes this game so special. They wanted this to be kind of like a watershed of the series up to this point, and I felt personally to me that this is the last Final Fantasy of its era. 1 through 9 have a particular feel, and I think this was the last of that. Final Fantasy 9 definitely has a pretty unique feel in the sense that it's the final one of this era of Final Fantasy, and after this point Hironobu Sakaguchi took a back seat and eventually left the company, but this was the last one he wrote and even had some creative control over. So this was one of the best Final Fantasies. So please give Final Fantasy 9 a chance. They've re-released it on so many other platforms like Nintendo Switch. I bought it 3 times at this point. I have it on the Nintendo Switch, on the PS4, on the PS1. I have it on PSN, so 4 times actually. I have this game in so many different formats because I just always want an excuse to jump into it. I try to play it at least once every 2 years or so because I appreciate it every time, just a little bit more every single time. And it has some of my favorite characters. My favorite character in this game is Vivi, just like a lot of people. The character arc for that one is just so heartwarming. So much to love about this title. Please give it a shot. Now at this point we're going to move on to the new era of Final Fantasy. I don't have the original version of Final Fantasy X, but I do have the remastered version as well as the PS Vita version. I don't have the PS4 remastered one because I personally didn't see a point at that time, especially because I had the Vita version and that was the one I completed the game on, just because it's portable. Even though 9 has a unique feel as if it's the last of a certain era of Final Fantasy, the future ones are not as bad. They just kind of vary in quality at this point, but 10 is one of the best video games I've ever played. Final Fantasy X has one of the most unique settings of any RPG I've ever played. Up until this point, we had a very either cyberpunk setting for a JRPG or a very classical medieval setting for JRPG. They wanted to challenge your perception of setting in a JRPG with this particular title, so they chose a more Asian-centric type of fantasy, which I very much enjoyed. It was a nice change of pace, and that's what makes this game feel so unique. It's the setting. Now, in terms of characters, I like most of them. I like Yuna. I actually love Yuna. She's actually my second favorite Final Fantasy character. I still don't understand why people don't understand the laughing scene from 10.
Next, try laughing out loud.
What?
Come on, show me.
In terms of turn-based battle system, this is the best one for me. It doesn't have a active time battle, so you can kind of take however much time you need in between turns, but it does have a very, 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 very fun battle system, and I think 10.2 actually takes it up a notch. I haven't completed 10.2 because I don't like the story of 10.2. I think it kind of takes away from the sacrifices that were made in the original Final Fantasy X. So 10.2 just wasn't it for me. Like, it just wasn't great, but the battle system, I'll always admit, was one of the best things about 10.2. So that's personally why, story-wise, I kind of wish they didn't make a 10.2. And it's probably why I haven't really finished it. And the music in this, I think, is my favorite in the franchise. The music in 10 is just so varied. There's so many nice ambient tracks as well as some very nice cutscene music. Oh my god, I can talk about that all day. The ending theme, it just still makes me tear up every time I hear it. Let alone if I see the scene. God forbid I see the scene, because I'll cry. The ending of this game is just so beautiful, so well done. This game is a masterpiece, in my opinion. It's so good. That's Final Fantasy X. Please pick this one up. It's on everything now. You can get it on Switch and PS4 now as well. So go ahead and pick this up on whichever platform you can.
You probably shouldn't laugh anymore.
Now, I have to admit, just like most people, I haven't played Final Fantasy XI, and I don't have much to say. I'm sorry. This track is pretty cool though. But I do have Final Fantasy XII, and this was the game that started off this entire video. That I got this game today. I've been hearing so many great things about Final Fantasy XII. My local Best Buy had a curbside pickup, and they only had 3 left in stock for the Nintendo Switch. I didn't want to get this game until I can get a physical copy. You can get this for $20. There's a sale right now at Best Buy. I don't know if it's still going on by the time I publish this video, but I found it also on $20 on Amazon. However, it's not available on Amazon, so I was wondering if they're just running out of this. Luckily, I found this one at Best Buy, so I got Final Fantasy XII. Looks fun. It's still in the wrapping. I haven't even opened it. I just got home and started making this video because I was so excited to talk about Final Fantasy after getting this. I got this for a steal of a price, 20 bucks. It's my first Nintendo Switch Final Fantasy game that I got physically, so that's a fun fact. But I'm really excited to go through this. It's probably going to be at some point in 2021. I don't really have the time to start this right now. I gotta finish through Final Fantasy V and Suikoden before I even start this. Other than that though, I'm just happy to have it. I've heard so many good things about this one, so kind of excited. So Final Fantasy XIII, not a bad game. I'm not gonna say it's a bad game, but it's definitely my most disappointing Final Fantasy I personally have played. There's so much I would like to say about this game. If you guys can't tell, this is a book off. $5.99 version. I got this basically to complete the collection, even though I don't love this game. And I think I paid a good price for it because that's how much I think this game is worth. It's my least favorite Final Fantasy, but there are good things about it. Soundtrack is amazing, I'll admit. The soundtrack is amazing. I do like certain characters like Saz and Fang, I believe was her name. And I do kind of like Vanille, even though her voice gets a little grating to listen to. Lightning looks cool. I think a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people of a similar mindset don't like Hope. I think that's a common consensus amongst most fans. I just don't know what to say. I don't like the main character that much. I think she's kind of an asshole, actually, especially with how she reacts to her sister being part of some cult on her birthday or something. Like, not a cult, but she was just branded by one of the gods against her will, and then she gets mad at her sister as if it was the sister's fault. I think the aspect of the lore, I should say, was interesting. The lore for this game and the music are probably the coolest things about this game. I just don't like the story and the characters, and unfortunately that's a big thing for me about Final Fantasy games. So unfortunately there's not much to say here. I did complete this, so I feel like I can talk about it and have a opinion on it. Yeah, not gonna lie, don't really like this one, but I understand that there are people that love this and say that the sequels are a lot better. I've heard music from the sequels and it sounds fantastic, and I kind of seen some cutscenes online. It looks interesting, I could genuinely say that, but I guess this one just left such a bad taste in my mouth that I didn't want to go back and play through it. So I don't know, maybe I will give the sequels a chance and just kind of forget this one and maybe just have like the background lore of this one and maybe just like this overall story in my head. But I don't honestly like this game that much. This is what I meant by the futures of Final Fantasy after 9 kind of going in quality from like amazing to like pretty bad. Like, so I just don't like this game personally, but I know there's a fan base that does. Nothing against that. Again, Final Fantasy for everybody, but I would not recommend this as someone's first Final Fantasy by any means. Again, haven't played 14 yet, but I am actually considering getting a subscription for 14. I think I just haven't played it personally because I've never played an MMO. I think I tried to play it at first for a little while it was free, and I think it's still free up to a certain level in the game. So that's something I want to check out because I love the soundtrack too. One thing you got to keep in mind for me when it comes to Final Fantasy, even if I don't play through the game, I still know a majority of the soundtracks, which is funny, and it just shows, it's a testament how good the music is in the series. And I've listened to a lot of 14 soundtrack, and I love it. I mean, I know a few friends that come up to mind when I think about Final Fantasy 14, and they love it too. They keep telling me like, "Hey, you should probably get into this. You'll probably like it a lot." And I think I'm gonna start playing it. I just want to play through some single player RPGs first before I jump into it. But I'm more on the fence about getting it now than ever before. So that's a good sign for them. So I'll probably be playing 14 soon. Probably giving updated thoughts on that. So look forward to that. I gotta talk about Final Fantasy 15. Now I know some of my friends hate this game. Some of my friends love this game. I'll tell you the things I love right off the bat. The music is probably my second favorite soundtrack in the franchise because it's composed by my second favorite composer, Yoko Shimomura. And even then, there's some blues kind of music and some other composers on the soundtrack that did a fantastic job. If you include the DLCs and even the expanded universe stuff that they tried to do, it's all that music-wise, some of Final Fantasy's best work, some of the best video game music I've ever heard in my life, some of the best music. Just escalating that. I'm going to keep escalating that. It's some of the best music I've heard in my life. I also think has the best cast. I've never felt more, and it's only 4 characters, and I think that's why, because there's only 4 characters, and because they each have like an anime episode dedicated to their backstory, and also just seeing how they interact with each other. They don't always get along. Sometimes they fight, sometimes they get along, sometimes they mess with each other. It's just the best cast in the series of Final Fantasy for me personally. And I also mentioned earlier in the video who I thought my favorite villain was. Arden Izunia, the best Final Fantasy villain, bar none. He has the best backstory. He has some of the best personality. I don't want to spoil too much. It's just you have to buy his DLC. You got to play it afterwards. That all being said, you're thinking best music, best setting, some of the best characters, best cast, best villain. Why isn't this game your favorite? And I guess that's due to the fact that the story is very fragmented. I wanted a lot of the story to be in the game as a one experience. There's just a lot of story aspects that I felt like, when it's a DLC or something, and I'll admit, look, if you buy the DLC, if you buy the Royal Edition of this game, and you're not like me, that bought the Final Fantasy 15 Ultimate Collector's Edition, which is a great collector's edition. I'm going to show off that in a bit. I just kind of want to go through the main games really quick. I wish there was a way in the game, I wish there was an update where when one person leaves, you can kind of play through their DLC and come back to the main game. Unfortunately, you kind of got to go through the main game and then go through the DLCs, and it kind of just feels like the impact sometimes is lost. Like I would have had a bigger impact with certain scenes. Also, gameplay-wise, battle system, so fun at first. I think it's just once you get to a certain level, it becomes a little too easy. So when I recommend this game, I actually could recommend this game for someone that's never played Final Fantasy before. The reason I say that, though, is because of how different it is from the rest of the series. It's an open world game with action combat. If you don't like turn-based, I think this is a good one to start off on. There's a lot to love about Final Fantasy 15. It's in my top 5 favorite Final Fantasies, to show how much I love it. The thing is, I wanted this to be my favorite. I know a lot of people shit on Nomura, but I love the ideas Nomura presented in the original draft of Versus 13, and even some of the stuff that Tabata did. As someone that loves Crisis Core, I love some of the changes he made, but I can't even blame him. I can only blame the time crunch and the mismanagement that Square Enix had with this game. So I hope they learn this lesson with Final Fantasy 16 whenever that comes out. I think it's coming out next year, but it has the potential to be some of the best work I've seen in fiction. It had the potential. I think the reason why I'm saying all this as I'm being like that harsh dad right now is because to me, it had the potential of being the best Final Fantasy. I genuinely think that. To me, it had the potential to be my favorite Final Fantasy. They just missed it because of the mismanagement of the company, and it's not even the artist's fault. It's not Nomura's fault or Tabata's. I can only blame upper management. I still wholeheartedly recommend this game for the characters, the villain, the music, the ending, the story. The way the story plays out is fine for me personally. I think my first experience not having the DLC available and just playing this raw, I think I still feel a little burned by that. But when I think about the DLC, I think this is one of the few Final Fantasies where I cried, besides 10 and 9 and 6. This is one of the few that I've cried. So I genuinely just, this one, and 7 Remake, there's a particular scene, Barrett, but I don't want to spoil that, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about if you play that. But this one is good. It's so good. But the thing that just upsets me is that it had the potential to be the best. I think it's time to show off some of the other Final Fantasy 15 merch I have. I have the Final Fantasy 15 soundtrack, Volume 1 and Volume 2. This is actually a soundtrack. I did an unboxing a long time ago on the channel. I'm not sure if it's still up, to be honest, because it was so poorly done. I think I deleted it. It also has a soundtrack for Kingsglaive and Brotherhood here, as well as a piano collection and a few other stuff. So this was the original Final Fantasy 15 soundtrack collector's edition. Came up with some nifty stuff, and then this one includes all the DLC pieces and a few other things. So that's the original soundtrack Volume 2. This one is also translated in English, luckily, though, so I can actually see Yoko Shimomura and her thoughts on Final Fantasy 15, which is actually really cool because, again, I love the music in this so much. Yoko Shimomura, I just love the way that she writes her dark. It's like she has this way of writing dark music, but making it also sound hopeful. And she has like that Latin flair that's in all her pieces, and I just love that about her. I love that woman's music. So Final Fantasy 15 is definitely a game that I have a soft spot for because of the music as well. So I got both those soundtracks. And a lot of other soundtracks I have digitally, but for some reason I just wanted this one physically so I could just read her interviews because I'm always interested in learning about her creative process. I have this really cute Moogle from Final Fantasy 15. There's no actually official Moogles in Final Fantasy 15 itself, but there's a character named Iris, and she makes a Moogle for the characters in the game. Like she does like these plushes that kind of act as a kind of a bodyguard, and they're really cute. I really like them. Love this little guy. And he's life-size too, so that's the fun part. It's like the Moogles are actually like this big in the game. I think maybe a little bit bigger, but yeah, the only thing with this is that the antenna doesn't really stand up, but that's okay. Like, I think that would be hard to do with something this big. So, I mean, it's just really heavy overall, but that just shows the good quality of the materials used here. And it's actually officially licensed by Square. It has like cute little wings and everything. It's a cute Final Fantasy 15 Moogle. I don't know what else to say about it. And now let's go ahead and go through the biggest collector's edition I've ever had in my life. So this is the Final Fantasy 15 collector's edition. This has so much stuff in it that I'm probably gonna have to unbox it through B-roll or something. So I'll probably do that in just a bit so you guys can see. But this has so much stuff. It has a figure, soundtrack, I believe, to a piano soundtrack, an art book, a not really nice player figure of Noctis. It's actually the only player art figure I have. If I could get every single Final Fantasy one, I would. I just don't have the space in my apartment nor the money. Those can get pretty damn fucking expensive, so don't have the money for it. But if I did, and if I had the space, you best believe I would be buying all of them. But this is the collector's edition for Final Fantasy 15. Hopefully my B-roll footage had some time to show that off. It's probably going to be pretty quick, but yeah, I love this box. Actually, I was so excited. I was actually at the Final Fantasy 15 Uncovered event, at the event. That's how excited I was for this title. Again, just knowing that Nomura had written the original script and everything, I thought it was just going to be something else. So you can see how much I love the game. And when it initially came out, I thought it was my favorite. And then I was kind of like, all right, like objectively, it's probably not. But I still like this game. I know a lot of my friends are going to give me shit for that. But I know some of my friends are actually going to praise that too. So it's okay. Now let's go ahead and go through the side games and some of the merchandise I have. And then, give you my thoughts on those. Because the side games, a little bit of a history with. I'm just going to go ahead and start off by telling my favorite side games in the series, and that is the Theatrhythm series. I know that's like a weird thing to have as your favorite because there's so many other things like Final Fantasy Tactics and all that, but I have put over 400 hours in each of them because I love Final Fantasy music. Theatrhythm, A Curtain Call, takes it just up to another level. I remember when this collector's edition was announced, I got it immediately. It came with a nice little 3DS pouch that I actually never used. I cared more about the pouch. I didn't want to damage the 3DS pouch, but it also came with a collector's edition and then a nice little box for the game itself. So it's a cute little collector's edition. The box is also very nice. I actually have this tucked away somewhere until I can have a nice space for it because I eventually want to have a space where I can have all my Final Fantasy, my entire Final Fantasy collection. And I also have this fat Chocobo figure, and he's also from the Theatrhythm series. Isn't he cute? Like, This is one of the best birthday gifts I've ever gotten, with all seriousness. He's just a fat chocobo. I mean, I love this thing. I mean, the regular chocobos are cute too, but you know, they're not as huggable as this chocobo over here. Love this guy. Speaking of chocobos and moogles, I do have a Theatrhythm moogle thing here. Unfortunately, I was looking for some of the other ones that they had. I particularly wanted a like a Cloud one, because I mean, Cloud's not my favorite character, but that one is adorable to me. There's also a cool Tifa one, and there's also some really cool other characters. I saw Squall at some point. This is a really cute figure. I haven't even opened it, to be honest with you guys. This is really cute. I don't really have a space to open it, but I like it a lot. You know, I hope I can open it at some point in the future. I love this little figure. The next game I have, unfortunately I don't have the like entire nice disc thing, but I did buy it used at a game store. It's just Final Fantasy Tactics. Final Fantasy Tactics I also have on my PlayStation Vita, so that is another game I have to get through. Unfortunately, I hear so many good things about Final Fantasy Tactics, and I just haven't had a chance to go through it. Fun fact is that I actually have the sequel, or kind of semi-sequel, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, and I've heard good things about this one as well. I just, again, haven't had time to really get into this series, but I hope I can get into it soon. Yeah, Tactics, I have it, just haven't really finished it, and then I also have it digitally, so I just wanted to get it physically on disc, and then hopefully I can just get the box at some point later on. Hey buddy, I haven't turned you on in a long time. I guess I should probably turn this on. So this is my PlayStation Vita, and it does have a few other Final Fantasy games that I did want to talk about. Dissidia and Dissidia Duodecim, and Dissidia 012 Duodecim being three of them. Something you gotta know about me. I personally think that Dissidia is one of the best fighting games, not just of within Final Fantasy, but just of all time. It's seriously one of the best fighting games. Dissidia and Dissidia Duodecim 012, I guess in particular, or I forgot which one is which, but there's one like that's kind of like just a prequel, and then there's one with everything put together. I'm talking about the one with everything put together. I'm pretty sure you guys know which one I'm talking about. Some of the best fan service and best fighting mechanics of any game. The only bad thing I can say, there was this like weird system where it's a fighting game, but you also have to level up your characters, so you can technically fight someone that's a higher level than you, and that can kind of kill you, and that's not fair because then it's not based on strategy. But once you max out all the characters' levels and you just kind of know how to play the game, it's still really fun. And my gosh, it's some of the best fun I've ever had in a fighting game. I think almost more fun than Smash, because I just love the fan service, and I just love how simple the fighting mechanics were. Seriously, one of the best games Final Fantasy has ever done as a side game. With that being said, though, I gotta talk about Final Fantasy Dissidia. I was so excited for this game, guys. And I'll admit to you, I said Final Fantasy 13 was the most disappointing Final Fantasy game I've ever played, but I take that back. I think this is one of the most disappointing Final Fantasy games I've personally ever played. And that's saying a lot, because I was so excited for this game. I was one of those that bought this. It's the Final Fantasy Dissidia NT Collector's Edition. I bought this. This was not cheap. It comes with all this stuff. It comes with a Warrior Light, a nice box, the steel case I have there, soundtrack, an art book, trading cards, and it's nice. And it comes with a season pass for the first 6 playable characters, which is nice. But the game is garbage. I wanted to love this game. I gave it about 10 hours of my life, and I still can't get into it, and I think it's the multiplayer aspect. When it comes down to it, I just don't think this game works as a multiplayer, like, 3-on-3 battle system. It just works, it doesn't work like that. It works best with a 1v1 type of scenario. And even if they had the 3x3 thing, or even a 2x2, right? I wouldn't even mind that. I would just let it slide. I'd just be like, alright, cool. Just give me some good 1v1 fighting stuff. And they didn't. If they had included a good 1v1 battle system in this package, I would not have any of the complaints. They also really simplified some of the mechanics. Before, you can have multiple HP attack moves, which if you don't know, that's how, it just gives some variety. Think of it as a smash move, right? What if in Smash, they took away your up smash, down smash, and you can only have your left and right smash? What if that was all you had? That's basically what they did here. In Final Fantasy Dissidia Duodecim, you can have multiple HP attacks, which was the attacks that would, kill your enemies. And you can have multiple set based on the direction you hit square. So if you put up square, it was a one move. If you didn't do any direction in square, it was another move. And left and right and back square were all different moves. And some people even had other special moves where they can use a bravery attack, which is circle, which is a fast attack, just there to deal, gain some bravery so that way you can deal more damage. And when you do that with a team environment that you're forced to play through, the 1v1 sucks because the battle arenas are so big and it takes forever to get to somebody. It feels insanely slow. It just wasn't a good experience for me, and that was disappointing because it was the first console Final Fantasy Dissidia game, and it seems like Square Enix is not going to make any more for some reason. I guess because this one flopped so bad, and I don't want them to just see this one as a failure and see that no one loves Dissidia anymore. I kind of hope that they would see like, all right, people want the kind of old style of Dissidia, maybe even a better storyline, maybe, just refined mechanics from the original, and maybe give an option for 1v1. Have all the stuff that you had in NT, but just add the stuff that was there from the original. I think people would love it if that was the case, but unfortunately, Dissidia NT was just kind of a mess, a little disappointing. I can see why some people like it if they like that team-based stuff. Just not for me. Very disappointing, and I bought the collector's edition. And one small thing I have in my collection, this Chocobo Hunt. It's a card game. I got it this year. I was planning to play it with some friends, but then quarantine happened, so I've been stuck inside with this unopened, unable to play with anybody. Maybe one day I'll bring this and play with some friends, maybe at a place or public setting, someone that likes Final Fantasy. A lot of my friends don't actually like Final Fantasy. I have a few that do. My music friends do. But the friends I grew up with, not a lot of them are into Final Fantasy, so I'm kind of like stuck with this one. But we'll see. Not all of them. I mean, I have some people I can play this with, but, I really want to try this out. Still sealed. I have no idea if this is good or not. I know there's like an expansion pack that I can buy at the Square Enix store, and it's really cute. I don't know what to say about it, though, because I haven't really played it. But it's a cute thing. I have it in my collection. Just thought I'd share it. And the last side game on this list is World of Final Fantasy. Now, the reason why I saved this one for last is because it's the only PS Vita one that I have besides 10 and 10.2, but I already have that physically and other stores and stuff. I know Maxima came out recently, so if I was to recommend this game, I would probably recommend World of Final Fantasy Maxima. But what a good game. This is a fun game with a fun, really good premise, some cool stuff at the end. This is fan service Final Fantasy the game. Like in Dissidia's case, it was Final Fantasy, if Cloud was fighting Squall, it was the Cloud from Final Fantasy 7 and the Squall from Final Fantasy 8 just coming into this world and just fighting with each other. But this does something really unique where they give everyone a completely different backstory to fit within this world of Grimoire. That there's a stack system, turn-based as well, not active time battle, but really fun. I genuinely think this is one of the most underrated Final Fantasy soundtracks I've ever listened to. And the one thing I can genuinely say though, is if you're not a big fan of the series, I don't know if this game is going to really appeal to you actually. But if you're a huge fan of the series like I am, this was a heartwarming adventure. I put about 80 hours into this. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy, you get the Maxima, World of Final Fantasy Maxima on Switch. It has some cool characters I'm jealous of, like Zack from Crisis Core. I did play Crisis Core. Can't really recommend that if you don't play 7 though. I genuinely think you can get away with just playing Crisis Core, and then you can get interested in playing 7 to finish the rest of the story, but I probably recommend playing 7 first, but I think you can get away with playing Crisis Core first. This was a fun game. Really cute, has a lot of Final Fantasy characters with unique backstories this time around, and they actually do some really cute and funny things. The humor in this is pretty good too. Some of it is a little obnoxious when it comes to Ryan, which is the girl character, and Lon is just kind of a dumb dude, but so the main characters are alright, they're funny at times, but everything else surrounding it is great. Alright, with all that being said, I think it's time to mention some of my favorite aspects of Final Fantasy and some of the games I'd recommend. So, in terms of my personal favorites, it goes in this order. Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 6, Final Fantasy 10, Final Fantasy 15, and Final Fantasy 7. That's just my personal opinion. I know that's going to be pretty unpopular, but that's just my personal favorites. 9 and 6 are kind of top dog for me. 10 is just there for its unique setting, battle system, has one of my favorite characters of all time. Obviously 15 is there because of the potential I mentioned, and then 7, it's not my favorite, but it's still in the top 5. It's still a really damn good game. And if you include Crisis Core, Zack is my favorite Final Fantasy character, by the way. Now, giving my recommendations on what Final Fantasies I think you start on if you just want to jump into the series. This is just my personal opinion. 10, because it's a nice middle ground between the new old guard of Final Fantasy, having the traditional, turn-based battle system, just refined, and then kind of, chocobos and cactuars and all that stuff, but also some of the new with like the more linear plot and, 3D graphics and kind of experimental non-fantasy setting. So that's why I think it's a nice middle ground between, if you just wanted to get in series, start off with 10. However, here are some contenders, just in case, 10 is not available to you for some reason, or maybe you just don't want to try 10 because it doesn't look like it appeals to you. Here's some other contenders. They're not in any particular order, just go off by which one appeals to you the most. I would say 15, 6, and I would also go with, honestly, 7. Only because 7 is a popular one that a lot of people start off with anyways. So a lot of people start off with 7 and then they're fans for the entire series. So that's a good one to start off on. But personally, I do think that 10 is the best one to start off on. And then if you want to get into the other ones, maybe if 10 doesn't appeal to you and you're like, I don't like turn-based stuff, play 15. If you like turn-based stuff and you love sprite work, play 6. And then if, 7 is just kind of like there, I have to include it. It's not, again, not my least favorite or anything. It's my 5th favorite Final Fantasy out of like the 20 plus games I have. But, I still love the game. So don't get me wrong. But, I just think there are some better ones to start off with if you've never heard of the series before. And 7 is a good one, don't get me wrong. But I start off with 7. And then if you want to play the remake after playing the original 7, man, that's complicated. I knew this was going to be a long video, but thank you guys for watching to the end if you're still here. I'm glad that you guys just liked watching me talking about Final Fantasy. Hopefully I gave you some good recommendations and you thought my list was interesting in terms of favorite Final Fantasy games. Not everyone's going to agree, but that's the beautiful thing about Final Fantasy. There's so much, it's so varied that everyone's going to have a different favorite, right? So that's just my personal experience with the series. I would love to know what your guys' favorite. Please comment below. I love having discussions with you guys. I do respond back as much as I can, especially when it's a detailed discussion. I just love talking about Final Fantasy, so go ahead, comment below, please. I want to talk to you guys about Final Fantasy. I don't get to talk about it enough. And if you guys do like the video, I do have a few other collection type videos that you guys can watch, so you guys can look at that. I have a 3DS collection and Pokemon collection as well, so hope you guys look forward to that. Other than that though, geez, just to close off this very long video, thank you for watching. I'll talk to you later. See you next time.